Have you ever worked with someone, or for someone, who thought they were great at their job but, let's just say, they weren't actually as good as they thought they were? Now, I know that the answer is almost a given and that most of you already have in mind an exact boss or colleague who mirrors the description I have just given, and I know it may seem almost unbelievable to you, but most of these people are men. What a surprise! Yes, statistically we men tend to overestimate ourselves more than women do, and, again statistically, we men are also more likely to have more successful careers. This is because one of the best ways to make others believe we are better than we actually are is to first fool ourselves into believing it ourselves. In his book Why Do So Many Incompetent Men Become Leaders?, Argentine psychologist Tomas Chamorro-Premuzic focuses on the gender gap in leadership roles in the workplace, particularly the underrepresentation of women leaders, a problem that is still universal, despite the clear improvements we have had in recent decades. But the more serious problem, the real problem, is that most leaders are incompetent. Indeed, whether in business or politics, incompetent leaders have negative effects on their followers and subordinates, causing low levels of commitment, trust and productivity, and high levels of burnout and stress. So, the main question we should ask is not why are there not more women leaders, but why do so many incompetent men become leaders? There are three main reasons. The first is our inability to distinguish between self-confidence and competence. In all cultures and countries, we tend to assume that confident people have greater leadership potential, but in any area of talent, including leadership, there is very little overlap between self-confidence, how good people think they are at something, and competence, how good they actually are at something. The second reason is our love of charismatic individuals, particularly since the explosion of mass media in the 1960s. But this trend has been amplified by the recent digital age. Just look at many of the most followed people on social media. We seem to want charming and funny leaders, but as many of us know, there is a big difference between being an effective leader and a likable character. In fact, the best leaders are humble rather than charismatic, to the point of being boring. The third and final reason for the rise of incompetent men is our inability to resist the allure of narcissistic individuals, people with grandiose visions who appeal to our narcissism. We have always admired famous people, but our admiration for people who love themselves or are famous just for being famous has been on the rise for decades. Going forward at this rate, in a few years looking back we will think of Conor McGregor as a humble and modest sportsman. Much of the popular advice that focuses on helping people become leaders feeds and promotes a narcissistic mindset. According to the author, this creates an excess of leaders who are unaware of their limitations and are unjustifiably self-satisfied. They see leadership as an entitlement and lack empathy and self-control, so they end up acting without integrity and indulging in reckless risk-taking. In contrast, the best leaders keep their own narcissism in check. They care a lot about others and they spend a lot of time worrying about their reputation, which is why there are very few scandals involving them. What are the main characteristics of a good leader? Mainly three: intellectual capital, or experience, expertise and common sense. Characteristics that enable a leader to perform his or her job better and have greater credibility and support from those with whom he or she works. Social capital, that is, the network of people and resources that a leader has at his or her disposal. A leader with a good network of contacts and relationships will be able to have a greater impact. Psychological capital, that is, how the leader will use his or her characteristics. Ability to learn, ambition, moral values, etc., etc. So how can we prevent incompetent men from becoming leaders? The first solution is to follow the signs and look for the qualities that make people better leaders. There is a pathological discrepancy between the attributes that entice us in a leader and those that are necessary to be an effective leader. If we want to improve the performance of our leaders, we need to focus on the right traits. Instead of falling in love with confident, narcissistic and charismatic people, we should promote people who are distinguished by competence, humility and integrity. Incidentally, this would also lead to a higher percentage of women leaders than men. Large-scale scientific studies show that women score higher than men when it comes to competence, humility and integrity. But the important point is that doing so would significantly improve the quality of our leaders. Having more women leaders is not an end in itself. Even a woman, if she is incompetent, is right for her not to become a leader. Having more women leaders, however, is a means of having more competent leaders, which is what we want, regardless of whether they are men or women. The second solution is to not trust your instincts. Most of us like our intuition, but most people are not as intuitive as they think. In this sense, intuition is a bit like a sense of humor. 90% of people think they have a fantastic sense of humor. But how many people are really funny? A much smaller percentage. We should therefore focus less on the impressions people give during job interviews or with the media, which are just an invitation to project our own prejudices and preconceptions. Even when we have good intentions, it is not easy to overcome this problem. For example, training on unconscious biases will rarely help you ignore that the person in front of you is white, female, or attractive. On the contrary, the more you try to suppress certain thoughts from your mind, the more obvious and present they become. If we want to improve the quality of our leaders and help more women reach leadership positions, the last thing we should do is lower our standards when selecting women. This means that we should not ask women to behave like incompetent men, such as asking them to leverage their charm when they lack the talent to back it up, or to spend more time on self-promotion or promoting their own personal interests. It also means not excluding men because they lack the traditional masculine characteristics that match our imperfect standards of leadership. To the extent that we can do these things, we will have better leaders. However, progress begins with each of us. If we want to improve the level of competence of our leaders, we must first improve our competence in judging and selecting leaders, especially men. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend that you check out the video, Why Stupid People Think They Are Smart, the Dunning-Kruger Effect, which you can find on this channel. And be sure to subscribe and activate the notification bell. Have a great day and see you next time.